Welcome back to In Ohio Country today. We're here in beautiful Cridersville, Ohio, with Jerry Dicus with Earth Safe Ozone. Jerry, thanks for being with us, and you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, well, it was about 21 years ago we started this business. We were going to do ozone and to help do food sanitation. Well, nobody ever heard of ozone and didn't know what it was, and it didn't have GRAS status yet, and eventually it did, but we ended up finding a use for it in mold remediation. So we started out and we've transferred to different things, but we did mold remediation for almost 20 years, and it's been a real good thing for us to do.
Well, you talk about mold remediation. That can be typically a lot of people think of mold remediation because they had water damage in their house and they have mold growing, or there's some condensation and they have mold growing. But mold remediation could be a lot of other things as well.
Yeah, there's we've run into about everything you could possibly think of over the last 20 years, but here recently, this cold weather has got a lot of attics got mold in them because of the condensation, and houses and just different places with all this mold's growing this year more than I've seen in 20 years.
So you started with mold remediation, and today you do so much more. We were talking before we started the interview about different applications, even for ozone. You want to touch on those a little bit? I thought the food preservation and all those kind of things was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I went to Fresno State. It was quite a few years ago. They had an ozone conference on shelf life of food that had been ozonated. Well, it basically doubled or tripled everything that they had tested. And you can ozonate strawberries. Meats are 5 minutes. Vegetables are 15 and fruits are 10, and you ozonate them in bubbling in ozone in water, and then you can put them in the refrigerator in a mason jar like strawberries, and they'll last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because if you don't usually eat the strawberries within 5 days, there's not much left to them. So, talked about uses of ozone. Another interesting thing with ozone in agriculture. You made mention about, and we have a lot of viewers, I'm sure, that are in the hog business and the livestock business. You want to talk about some of the features and benefits that ozone might provide for them?
Yeah. Well, ozone is the second most powerful oxidizer, and it will kill about any chemical compound there is. And it can be used in cleaning trucks when you have hauling hogs. You can use cold ozonated water. They have a unit now that you can just go in and spray the cold ozonated water, and it does a 7-log bacterial decrease. You can use it in cleaning the barns. You can use it for treating wastewater. A lot of big cities now treat wastewater and drinking water with ozone, which they never did before. Well, I can't say that because Perrysburg, Ohio was like 1918 or something like that they started treating their water with ozone. I think Salina has a unit on their water with ozone.
So we talked about ozone, and all the benefits, and at one time using that for mold remediation. But today you still are doing the mold remediation, but you're using a little bit different process. Actually, some pretty good stuff that was developed not by you, but by the U.S. military.
Yes, it's called Decon 5, and it's a 2-part hydrogen peroxide. You mix it together, and it takes 5 minutes for it to activate, and then you use a fogger, and you fog everything with it. It'll kill molds, viruses, bacteria, allergens, insect larvae, and the insects, fungus, VOCs, which are formaldehydes and that kind of stuff, and odors. And it's biodegradable and non-toxic, so it basically is a safe alternative.
That's when you talk about biodegradable and good for the environment, that's always a good thing today, given everybody's concern about what's in their air, what's in their food, and what's in their water.
Yeah, and we have all kind of equipment to test that with. We have a mold spore meter here that we can go in and just take a reading in every room, and then one outside, and compare that, if any of the rooms are 10 times higher on the inside than the outside, then there's a problem with it. We have a bacteria meter here that you can swab an area, put the swab in the meter, and it tells you how many bacteria count on that surface, so that if we are doing some hydrogen peroxide fogging, we can go back and test it to make sure it worked. Like we can do daycare centers because you can do all the toys and everything. We can do restaurants because the only thing you can't do is open food. Everything else is fine. And so it's really a good sanitize. And we've done some houses where people were getting the flu and it just kept going and on and on, so we go in and fog it to knock it down. We have a VOC meter that we can go in and check for the VOCs, like off-gassing of furniture, off-gassing of carpeting, paints. There's all kinds of stuff. And we also have that's a Flir infrared camera. They're really small now. We have a bigger, older one, but this one, you can check the walls for moisture so that when we're looking for leaks or looking for mold, it has to have moisture. So if we can find the moisture, usually we can find the mold without cutting out all the walls and everything.
You know, that's quite a bit of technology there that you're using to determine what needs to be treated and how it needs to be treated. You know, Jerry, it's interesting. We've talked about a lot of things that you do, and people are going to, they're going to want to know what are some of the craziest things you've run into, or what are some of the problems, or how have you helped people solve some of those problems?
Well, a lot of the problems we get into are crawl spaces, and like the housing market's hot right now, and we've been so busy because of the home inspectors finds mold in the crawl space. Well, why is there mold in the crawl space? Usually it's moisture. So we go down and try to understand where the water's coming from, and then a lot of times we'll add a sump pump there, and that may take care of the problem. And so you get it cleaned up and insulated right. Insulation on the bottom of the floor joists is the wrong way to go. Spray foam insulation around the outside is excellent because that keeps the moisture and the air from infiltrating, and it usually pays for itself. And when you put insulation, especially fiberglass insulation on the floor, it tends to absorb moisture. And then when that happens, then mold grows on the floor joists. And if you don't do something about it fairly soon, all of a sudden you got rotten floor joists, and you can feel your floor kind of bouncing a bit. And I was in a house the other day that they ended up having to put floor joists on every floor joist down there, and a new main beam, which I don't know what that cost, but that had to have been expensive.
So what the things that you do is more than just getting rid of the mold. In other words, you're going to help solve the problem so you don't need to return.
Yeah, well, like right now, all this moisture in the attics, and anybody that's got a problem with ventilation, it's coming about this year. So I go up and look, and you want to make sure that the air is coming in through the eaves and out the ridge. And most of the time they got, somebody blew in some insulation, stuffed all the vents full, and now all of a sudden the whole ceiling there's black. And, it's just about getting the right ventilation. I was just at one the other day, told them they need to put a ridge vent in and get the insulation out of the soffits. And that'll probably take care of it. So once we clean it, and we got a product now that we can air spray on, and it's called Gone for Good, and they give a 10-year guarantee that the mold won't come back. We did a house not too long ago. It was a tri-level house, and the sump pump on the outside of the house quit, and somehow the water went about 8-10 inches deep in the lower level. And they even had a leak inspector out of Cincinnati come, and they couldn't figure out how that water was getting into that lower level. But we dug around and couldn't see anything that made any difference. But we went in and dried it all out, and we had to tear out some drywall and stuff because whenever drywall gets wet, it's pretty well, you got to cut it out. And people we run into all the time, their basement flooded, so they put a couple fans down there, and 6 months later it smells musty. And it's because they didn't pull the trim off, they didn't cut the drywall. That's a must when you get a flooded basement. Pull the carpet, the pad needs to go away because you can't get it dry. You can float carpet and get it dried out, but the pad not.
Jerry, I know you're not a doctor or a medical expert, but can you talk about the adverse effects that mold in somebody's home is going to have?
Yeah. Well, you can have mold all over your basement and have 20 people living in a house. It may only affect one person. You just don't know who it is. Younger, older, anybody with autoimmune diseases can affect them. Headaches, sinus problems, there's all kinds of things that it can affect. And so it's always wise to, even just get your house checked, even if you don't think there is. It's still, in my opinion, just a good way just to make sure there's nothing lurking around.
Jerry, we've talked a lot about a lot of things, and people might just be curious how easy is it to get you to come out and take a look?
Oh, real easy. Just give us a call at 419-227-0303, and we'll set up a time to come out. But I can usually come out and do inspections usually within a day or two.
And if somebody wanted to find out a little bit more information, they didn't want to give you a call, but they wanted to look you up, where can they find you?
EarthSafeOzone.com.
Jerry, thanks for being with us.
Thanks a lot.
We'll be back with more right after this.
Sinus problems and headaches? Have a sneaking suspicion there's mold lurking about? With over 20 years in business, you can trust the professionals at Earth Safe Ozone. They will test, inspect, and treat your home or office, eliminating mold, mildew, fungus, and bacteria. It's time to put an end to pesky mold. Call 419-227-0303 to schedule your mold spore test today.